Okay, good morning. So we are on Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph, 118a. And we're holding in the middle of the page, roughly the middle page, the line which begins L'chol Basar. And then if you go to the end, towards the end of that line, or a little after the middle, you'll see Omar Rabbi Levi ben Azariah. L'chol Basar, the line begins L'chol Basar. It's the middle of the page. And here you see, here.
Okay.
Sorry, and Omar Rabbi Levi ben Azariah here.
Okay.
Yeah. You have it there? Yeah. Okay, so the Gemara is speaking of the nature of parnasa, of providing a sustenance. And we spoke quite a bit about that, the difficulty and challenges of making a parnasa, understanding that God is a partner and that it's a miracle like the splitting of the sea. We spoke about that. We spoke about parnasa relative to giving birth and so on. Here, the Gemara is going to a little bit digress in terms of comparing the experiences we have and how difficult they are on a sort of cosmic level. In the same way there was a parnasa, where we say that it's difficult, parnasa is difficult like splitting of the sea, which is a cosmic event, the splitting of the sea, and we're comparing that to an individual personalized event, making a parnasa. So we're gonna have a similar kind of comparison here too. Now, as is the way of the Gemara, nothing is off the table, right? It's a religious text, certainly, a legal text, and like any legal text, it's got to get into the nitty-gritty, or any good legal text. But additionally, even as a spiritual text, everything is on the table. For the Gemara, no subject is too crude, and no subject is too lofty. If it's truth, and we discuss it. So keeping that in mind, says the Gemara as follows. Amr Rabbi Levi ben Azariah, Rabbi Levi, son of Azariah, said, Kashin nikvav shel adam, a person relieving himself, going to the bathroom, relieving himself. And as Rashbam puts it, kishu otzer, when a person has constipation, his difficulty relieving himself is so difficult. Shel adam, a person who feels like he can't relieve himself, is so difficult. Ki yom hamisa, like the day of death, God forbid. That's how difficult it is. U kakriyas yamsuf, and like the splitting of the sea. That's how difficult it is. Quite the comparison. So we have a person dealing with a difficulty relieving himself compared to the worst experience of his life, which is the end of life, death, and then on a cosmic level, comparing it to the splitting of the sea. That's how difficult it is, which I think what the Gemara is saying on a most basic level, the Gemara is saying that on a personal level, it's very difficult, just like death, God forbid, and on a cosmic level, it's difficult, like the splitting of the sea, which maybe perhaps more broadly is in the same way we said that parnasa is difficult for a person on a personal level, comparing it to giving birth, that's even more difficult than that. And we compared it on a cosmic level to the splitting of the sea, and that for God to provide, it's a miracle. The same thing is true of a person's own health. His health, and we have challenges with his health. On a personal level, it's like the most difficult thing, like death. And on a cosmic level, for Hashem to provide health is like the splitting of the sea. In the same way we had this with parnasa, with making a living, difficulty on a personal level and difficulty on a cosmic level. Same thing here, person's health, represented by perhaps the person not being able to relieve himself as a health issue. Compare that to his, on a personal level, difficult like death, and on a cosmic level, it's a miracle like the splitting of the sea when a person has a healthy body that can function. And the Gemara cites a verse to indicate this idea. Shenemar, as the verse reads, in Isaiah chapter 51, verse 14, which says, in the Hebrew, Maher tsoyo lipaseach, v'ksiv basrei, and it's written afterwards, Roga hayam v'yehem ugalav. So I'm just pulling up on my screen the text of Isaiah, and it reads as follows. Mihar soya lipaseach. What must be poured out, hastened to be opened. And he shall not die of destruction, and his bread shall not be wanting. And then the verse goes on to say, next verse, verse 15, I am God your Lord, God who wrinkles the sea, and its waves stir. The Lord of hosts is his name. So the verse itself, entire context here is talking about Mashiach's coming. But then, it's talking about, the verse here makes reference to what must be poured out, hasten to be opened. The word there, first of all, it in itself is a reference to being able to relieve oneself. It should be hastily open to come out. And even the word soya, which means here to be poured out, in Hebrew, if you switch the ayin for the aleph, it becomes excrement, which is what's required to be here. And then it goes on to say, shall not die of destruction, comparing it to, God forbid, death. And then the next verse talking about, I am Lord who splits the sea. So there's a comparison there. Okay, perhaps on a spiritual, on the basic level, person's health, being the difficulty of the challenges of maintaining a good health is equal and painful like death. And on a cosmic level, like the splitting of the sea, the miracle of health, like the splitting of the sea. Perhaps on a spiritual level, try to understand what this all means, the connection between these three things, the difficulty relieving oneself, death, and the splitting of the sea. So let's begin with the first thing, which is relieving oneself on a spiritual level. On a spiritual level, it's really the idea of birur. Birur, which means to refine, to select. We talk about birur nitzotis, to elevate the sparks. The literal translation of the Hebrew is actually to select the sparks. Birur means to select, right? Which essentially is like this. You have everything that exists. You have an item that exists in this world. We'll take this cup. There's divine energy keeping this cup going, right? Now, the divine energy that's invested in this cup prefers that of all the possible uses that this cup has, it be used by someone who make a bracha on it, and then use the energy of the honey water in this case to learn Torah and have a clear throat so I can learn. So I am selecting from all the possible options that this spark has the godly spark. That's what Boider Netzites is. I'm selecting the spark, right? I'm selecting that which is holy from the mundane. Now, what happens to the rest of it? The rest of the possibility that this cup has, it's the waste, it's the extras. And the same thing happens physically in the body. As I eat, there are nutrients in the food, and then there are things that are not so nutritious, right? So the job of my internal system is to select the nutrients out of the food, and then to let go of everything else. When a person, God forbid, can't let go of everything else, there's the unhealthiness. There's the spiritual constipation or literal constipation, right? I've selected the nutrients from the food, but now the waste is not being expelled. So even though I get all the nutrients, but I'm also stuck with all the waste, and that's very, very painful. That's like, spiritually speaking, I've selected in my life the good and holy from all the possibilities, but I haven't let go of all the negative. That's very, very painful, right? There are some times where the problem is lack of nutrients. That's one kind of problem, right? A person's lack of nutrients. Or in the spiritual case, a person's lacking the ability to utilize his world for the positive, to select the positive and use that. That's one kind of problem. Okay. For that, the solution is, well, start eating healthy, start eating food, start engaging. The problem on the other side could be even more difficult, where I am getting my nutrients, but I'm also keeping all the waste. So I am engaging the world spiritually in a positive way. I'm selecting the sparks and elevating them, but I'm also holding on to all the waste, which would mean in very practical terms, I'm doing all mitzvahs, but I'm also doing all sins. So I got all the mitzvahs, I got all the sparks, but I'm not letting go of the negativity. And that can be very, very painful. That can be very painful. And that's like compared to a death, God forbid, a spiritual death. Right? Because a spiritual death is like a parasite. It's the negativity that doesn't go away. And it ends up sucking on all the good energy until, God forbid, it destroys its own host. Right? That's what a parasite is. A parasite is waste. It's not being let go of. It's external. It's the non-select nutrients. It's hanging on there, sucking out all the life. So, God forbid, there's a death here, spiritually and literally, physically. If the person has all the nutrients in the world, but also has an external element that's supposed to be expelled, that's still attaching. So even if a person has all the mitzvahs and he's got all the good deeds and he's selected all the holy spiritual to elevate, but he's still got that negativity holding on to him, it can, God forbid, yank him down, even, God forbid, to a point of spiritual death.
That's the blockage.
And that's the blockage. He's not letting go. He's not allowing to expel the negative. And this is akin to the splitting of the sea. The splitting of the sea had two components. First of all, it saved the Jewish people. So the Jewish people were safe. But it also got rid of the Egyptians. Finally. Right? So the splitting of the sea opening up to be able to go to a new realm has to let go of the old realm also. The opening for the Jews, the opening for the positive, and the closing on that which is negative. So as we emerge into a new world to enjoy the nutrients of the healthy, the holy, the spiritual, the mundane, we also have to be able to let go of all the negative. That's the spiritual idea of being able to believe oneself, associated with the splitting of the sea, and mirroring the literal experience of, God forbid, constipation. Okay, so we started a little late today, but I'm glad we got some few lines in here, be able to learn something, and God willing, tomorrow we'll continue with some more. Yeah, so yeah. It's
elevate everything. The body becomes sanctifies every moment and everything.
I find it to be actually quite challenging if many people nowadays. We have a lot of spiritual seekers in the world, and people seek out spirituality and then they find it. But I find that a lot of times people have a hard time letting go of everything else. You know, I love Judaism and I love it and I engage in it, but I also love doing this, which may be not so healthy. So the second component, like the sun meirah, the expelling of negative, sometimes is even more challenging than the engaging in the positivity. The engaging in the positive is attractive. It's great. The animal soul enjoys a good niggin also, a good spiritual connection to God. Even my animal selfish self can enjoy. But to let go of the negative, sometimes it's much harder.
Not to live a recess existence.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm recess now. No,
Yeah.
We're interns on duty 24 hours a day, like somebody in an emergency ward.
That's right.
Recognize it, like we're doing everything of ourselves every moment with everything.
Everything.
There's no recess existence.
24/7. We're enlisted 24/7.
Everything is brought forward in such a way that there's no separation.
Yeah.
It's all one.
Yep. Beautifully said. Okay, have a wonderful day, Yidden. And God willing, we'll continue tomorrow in good health. Thank you for pushing me to do this at least for a few minutes. It's worth every effort for a few minutes of Torah. A beautiful message and idea. Have a wonderful day, Yidden.
I'm so grateful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.